Welcome to the walkthrough of the frequently made mistakes for assignment 3A in CS254. First, please make sure you thoroughly document your code. I know I say this every time, but people are still not documenting their code thoroughly. Secondly, please make sure that your acquire Palantiri and gaze method contains the fixes I described in previous frequently made mistakes walkthrough videos for earlier assignments. In particular, make sure to call the acquire Palantiri method before the try block, not inside the try block. And also make sure to have your code be exception safe. This code is not exception safe. If Palantiri.gaze happens to throw an exception, release Palantiri will not be called. So make sure you fix that properly using the finally block correctly. Let's now move down into the Executor Completion Service Manager implementation. First, this code is incorrect. It's initializing the executor service in the wrong place. It shouldn't be done here in the class field declaration section, number 1, and number 2, the parameter that's being passed to new fixed thread pool is wrong. It shouldn't be some constant like 10. Instead, it should be the number of beings, and that computation is only available a little bit later. So make sure that you update things correctly to ensure that that code is called in the right factor method. We'll take a look in a minute about see where that goes. Here's the place that it should be going. It should be in the create executor service method, and this method needs to initialize the executor service by creating a new fixed thread pool using the right number of threads, where that is the number of beings that are configured. And that, of course, can be set using a command line or a GUI option, so make sure that you're able to handle that, which could be set dynamically. So you're not going to be using a fixed constant here, but make sure you initialize that in this factor method. Likewise, make sure that you properly initialize the executor completion service inside the create executor completion service factor method, and this code here is not doing that properly. Now let's turn our attention to some problems that I saw when I reviewed begin being thread pool. So first, there's no need to use a stream here since the list, which is what's being returned from the getBeings method, has a for each method built into it. So you can just use that. There's no need to convert it into a stream. And likewise, please make sure you use a method reference here instead of using a lambda expression. It's just cleaner. Your code should actually, your IDE should prompt you to make that switch automatically. But if you forget, go ahead and do it manually. Please also get in the habit of using the Java for each method and a method reference here instead of using a for each loop. For each loop is so old school Java, and we want to be trying to use more modern Java features. Now let's turn our attention to some issues with await completion of futures. There's a whole bunch of different problems here. First thing here is you need to make sure that you bound the number of iterations based on the number of beings that have been configured to be processed, again, by this GUI level option you can set. And you don't want to just do a forever loop. This is a forever loop, and you don't want to use a forever loop here. Down here, we want to call the take method on the executor completion service, and that will block. And then when that comes back with the results of the future, you need to make sure you call the get on the result future in order to ensure that you've got the results. So make sure you do that check here as well. We'll see that that problem arose in a couple different places. Here's another problem with await completion of futures. The code that we're showing here, the call to create executor service and create executor completion service, those things don't really belong there. They belong in begin being thread pool, so make sure you hoist them up there and don't put them in await completion of futures. Down here, this code is also iterating the wrong number of times. It should not be iterating for number threads or num_threads. Instead, it should be iterating for the number of beings. Another problem here is you need to make sure that you're storing the future that's returned from the take call. And once you store that future, make sure you call the get call on the result future in order to be able to get the result. So continuing on with some issues with await completion of futures. This particular code is the grad student version that uses Java streams, which is great. But in this particular case, there's a missing call to get the future result. And you can also kind of rejigger the code a little bit if you're doing the grad student solution to make it a little bit cleaner. So make sure you get the result, not just take the result. Now let's turn our attention to the last set of problems. These are all problems with the shutdown now method. I'm not sure quite why there's a call to create an executor service in shutdown now. After all, the whole point of this is to shut things down, but at any rate, it's not the right thing to do. Down here, this code is invoking the wrong version of shutdown. It's calling shutdown, not shutdown now, so make sure you call the right method. And then also there's some really weird code going down here where after await termination returns, there's a call to shut down now again. Definitely not sure what that's about. That's incorrect. Let's take a look at this implementation of shutdown now, where the comment said wait for all the threads to terminate. There was something missing there. There's nothing waiting for the threads to terminate, so please make sure that you handle that properly. And here's the final problem with shutdown now. This is absolutely the wrong call to make here, calling wait on the executor service, since it will most likely never return, so that's the wrong call to make. And again, there's no need to call shutdown now again. So make sure you call it up here where the ... dots are, and once you call it up there, there is no need to call it again later. So those are my observations of frequently made mistakes for assignment 3A. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know.